Good to be with you. I'm Tony DeCopel. The breaking news right now. Deadly runway disaster. An Air Canada jet slamming into a fire truck while landing at New York's LaGuardia Airport. The crash killing the pilots and injuring dozens. The truck cleared to cross the runway. Then moments later, the control tower realizing its mistake.
Stop.
Tonight, what went wrong? And was air traffic control staffing a factor? Also developing tonight, ICE agents arrive at more than a dozen U.S. airports as lines still stretch for hours. What they're doing and what they can't. Breaking tonight, discussions begin between the U.S. and Iran through mediators to set up possible peace talks, what we're now learning. Also, catastrophic floods and devastating winds slam Hawaii. Hundreds rescued. Chief Correspondent Matt Gutman on what's being called a billion-dollar storm.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Tony DeCopel.
And good evening. We're going to begin with everything we know right now about that deadly collision at LaGuardia Airport late last night. An Air Canada jet landing and then slamming into a Port Authority fire truck. The accident generating so much force it sheared off the nose of the plane and sent the truck tumbling over onto the grass next to the runway. Both pilots died on impact and dozens of other people are injured tonight, among them a flight attendant. Thrown still in her jump seat out onto the tarmac, and yet she survived. A total miracle, according to her daughter. But tonight, investigators working to understand why this accident happened at all. And Tom Hansen is at LaGuardia for us. The plane and the truck still there behind him, right where they came to a stop. Tom, good evening.
Tony, good evening to you. Well, flights here at LaGuardia have begun to resume, but it's to the backdrop of that mangled wreckage. We've been watching as the NTSB has sifted through the debris. They pulled 2 data recorders from the plane, and now investigators are hard at work to figure out exactly what went wrong here.
Surveillance footage captured the terrifying moment an Air Canada Express jet traveling more than 100 miles per hour slammed nose first into a Port Authority fire truck crossing the runway just before midnight.
Truck 1 accompanying LaGuardia Tower requesting to cross.
Seconds earlier, an air traffic controller cleared the truck to cross, but quickly realized the Air Canada jet was landing and tried to get the truck to stop.
Stop.
That fire truck was responding to another airline that requested help to investigate an odor on board. Minutes later, as the controller directed traffic in the aftermath, he appeared to take responsibility for the collision.
That wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know I was here. I tried to reach out to my staff, and we were dealing with an emergency earlier, and I messed up.
No, man, you did the best you could.
The flight from Montreal carried 72 passengers and 4 crew members. Both pilots were killed. Dozens were injured and taken to area hospitals. A flight attendant was found alive on the tarmac, still strapped to her seat. The 2 firefighters in the truck also suffered injuries.
I just want to let America know that we are working our hearts out to make sure that when people travel, whether by rail or car or by air, that they travel safely.
For hours, the airport was shut down and started resuming flights late this afternoon with only 1 runway open.
The pilots did the absolute best they could, and I'm forever going to be thankful for that.
And Tony, 9 patients remain in the hospital tonight with non-life-threatening injuries. Meanwhile, the FAA says that runway where the collision unfolded will remain closed until Friday morning, Tony.
Tom Hansen for us, leading us off at LaGuardia Airport. Tom, thank you. Let's now go to senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve. Chris, good evening to you. What do we expect investigators to focus on here?
Well, Tony, the NTSB is going to take a deep dive into what was going on inside that air traffic control tower. They're going to look at staffing and workload. If that sounds familiar, those were central focuses of the mid-air collision over Washington, D.C. It factored into that crash. It may have been a factor into this accident. Now, LaGuardia is a fairly well-staffed control tower, and the transportation secretary today said there were more than 1 controller working at the time of this accident. The FAA would have called that adequate staffing. The NTSB is going to look at whether those assumptions about adequate staffing actually made sense with the amount of workload. Remember, they were dealing with an emergency on one side of the airport with a United flight that had a fume issue, as well as air traffic coming and going and planes moving around the tarmac. The workload got really high for the controller at the point where he was clearing that fire truck to come across. The other thing they're going to look at is communication. Who knew what when? It is likely, Tony, that the fire truck and the air traffic controllers were talking to each other on one radio channel and the plane and the controller were talking on another. So those pilots never heard that fire truck be cleared to come across the runway, and that plane, before they land, they pitch the nose up. It's called flaring. So those pilots may have not seen that fire truck until they were wheels down and barreling down runway 4.
Wow. You know, Chris, people at home will think about the timing here. It happens during this partial government shutdown. TSA officers working without pay, many not going to work. This crash not related to any of that, correct?
Correct. Certainly not any tie to the safety of the aviation system, but for flyers, the combination could certainly be unsettling, Tony. All
right, Chris Van Cleef for us. Chris, thank you very much. Meantime, those long security lines at many airports often take more time to get through than the flight itself. To maybe speed things up, President Trump announced over the weekend that ICE agents would help, and they did indeed show up today at more than a dozen airports, including in Houston. Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga is there. Nicole, doesn't look like it's helping yet.
Good evening, Tony. Standing next to the bitter end of airport security, a maze of more than 5 hours right now. 6 weeks into this DHS shutdown, nearly 40% of TSA officers here in Houston have called out sick, but travelers we're speaking with aren't blaming them. They have harsh words for Washington after foregoing working air conditioning, food, and water. They're calling the situation here unacceptable, unbelievable, and outright dangerous. How many hours early did you get here?
I got here about 12:30.
What time's your flight?
6:08.
6 hours early.
At George Bush Intercontinental, travelers navigated this line through baggage claim, snaking up to ticketing, but it started underground.
It's getting crazier by the day.
At some airports, from Philadelphia to New Orleans to Newark, worried travelers have been showing up ahead of their scheduled flights. Today, the Trump administration deployed ICE agents to at least 14 airports. They're calling hotspots to help already strained TSA officers, trafficking passengers through long lines.
Their number one mission there, as the president said, is help TSA with security, help move the flow of people through those lines.
But while ICE officials are getting paid, roughly 50,000 TSA officers remain without a paycheck, and more than 400 have quit since the shutdown began last month. DHS says the number of TSA callouts reached a new high over the weekend, with more than 40% calling out at airports in Atlanta and New Orleans Sunday.
I got here 5:30. My flight is at 9, so I'm a little worried.
Back in Houston, this man missed his flight to Florida altogether.
Today we arrived at the airport about 4 hours early to go to Orlando for my daughter's 18th birthday. And I was told that 4 hours would be sufficient. When we got here, I was told that it wouldn't be. I waited in the line for about 2.5 hours before determining that this is probably a 9 to 10 hour line.
And DHS officials tell us ICE agents stationed here are not here to carry out immigration arrests, but rather they're helping to support TSA officers. Tony?
Nicole, thank you very much. A deal to pay TSA officers and get them back to work is the only fix for the problems at America's airports, but Washington does not seem close to it. Here's congressional correspondent Nicole Killian with more on that and also the latest from Washington on the war with Iran.
Despite the chaos at some of the nation's airports, President Trump urged Republicans not to make a deal to end the DHS shutdown unless Democrats back one of his top priorities, a voter ID bill known as the Save America Act.
It should be part of the Homeland Security bill, and I'm requesting that the Republican senators do that immediately. You don't have to take a fast vote. Don't worry about Easter going home. In fact, make this one for Jesus.
The White House called off a Monday meeting with Senate Democrats, even though some progress was made last week with border czar Tom Homan.
Let's make it very clear. Donald Trump is the one standing in the way of paychecks for TSA workers with the ridiculous attempt to pass the SAVE Act.
The president appeared more optimistic about reaching a deal with Iran.
We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement.
Trump had threatened to strike Iran's energy infrastructure if the Strait of Hormuz remained closed. Today, he backed off the threat.
We were planning tomorrow on shooting down some of their power plants, and we're going to hold that up. Hopefully we won't have to do it.
The news sent markets up more than 600 points, while oil prices fell below $100 a barrel. But the average gas price continued to climb towards $4 a gallon, now at $3.96.
The price of oil will drop like a rock as soon as a deal is done.
The president says Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner are handling discussions with Iran, but he wouldn't say exactly who they're negotiating with, only noting that it's a top person. A senior Iranian official tells CBS News they receive points from the U.S. and are reviewing them. Tony?
Nicole, thank you very much. After more than 3 weeks of war, U.S. forces have struck more than 9,000 targets in Iran and damaged or destroyed more than 140 ships and boats, all that according to the Pentagon. But the Islamic Republic tonight continues to fire back at the U.S. and its allies. Senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata has more on the fighting tonight from Tel Aviv.
In the middle of the latest wave of airstrikes across Iran, a sudden about-face from President Trump, postponing for 5 days a deadline to obliterate Iran's power plants in order to break the country's siege on the Strait of Hormuz. But CBS News has learned Iran has laid at least a dozen mines in that strait to target any ships that dare to try passing through. Officials tell us there's been no change in the plans to send thousands more Marines and sailors to the region, in addition to ordering elements of the 82nd Airborne Division, potential ground troops, to prepare to deploy. And yet, despite more than 3 weeks of punishing airstrikes, Iran continues to strike back. With 2 ballistic missiles hitting cities in Israel's south over the weekend, injuring close to 200 people. 2 strikes within a few hours, raising concerns Israel and U.S. forces may be running low on interceptors as this war goes on. There have been a number of cluster bombs over the weekend, too, even in neighborhoods behind me in Tel Aviv. But over the last 24 hours, it's been a lot quieter, which may suggest Iran is either running out of these missiles or conserving what they've got left. Tony?
Charlie D'Agata for us in Tel Aviv. Charlie, thank you very much. We turn now to Chicago with news on the man that police say randomly shot and killed Sheridan Gorman, that 18-year-old Loyola University student, last week. According to the Department of Homeland Security, he's a Venezuelan national in the country illegally with a prior warrant for his arrest tied to shoplifting charges. The victim's family saying, quote, "We are gravely disappointed by the policies and failures that allowed this individual to remain in a position to commit this crime." The suspect is charged with, among other charges, first-degree murder. Another incident in the skies today. A helicopter crashed into a warehouse in Boynton Beach, Florida, killing both people on board. You can see here part of the helicopter sticking out of the roof there after going right through it. Police say they don't know if the pilot was trying to land for some reason, all of it under investigation. Now to London, where police are investigating what the Prime Minister there called an anti-Semitic arson attack, setting fire to 4 ambulances belonging to a Jewish volunteer organization. Lee Canary has details.
Tony, the attack was on a fleet of ambulances. You can see them behind me, completely destroyed. They belong to Hatzalah, which is a volunteer-led ambulance service. It's actually run by this Jewish community. Now, security footage caught 3 people in hoods pouring accelerant on the vehicles before igniting them and fleeing. Oxygen cylinders inside exploded, and residents told us it woke them up, but no one was hurt. A largely unknown Islamist group, Harakat Asab al-Yamin, claimed responsibility on social media, but police have not yet confirmed the authenticity of their claim. That same group claimed responsibility for 3 other attacks in Europe in March alone. The Jewish community in London is relatively small, about 150,000 people. In the last year, there have been over 1,000 anti-Semitic hate crimes reported to police. Tony?
Lee Canary from London. Lee, thank you very much. Still ahead, the catastrophic floods lifting homes off foundations, sweeping away cars, and forcing thousands from their homes. The latest from Hawaii next. Hawaii is looking at what could be a billion-dollar recovery after its worst flooding in 2 decades. The island of Maui, ravaged by wildfires just 2 years ago, now hit by back-to-back storms over the weekend. CBS News chief correspondent Matt Gutman has the latest.
That historic deluge over the past week has turned some of Hawaii's emerald communities into wastelands of mud. Parts of Oahu and Maui were battered by a pair of massive storms, which the governor said had unleashed up to 4 feet of rain in certain areas. It caused the worst flooding in 20 years, blasting down riverbeds, blowing out bridges and roads, and swallowing cars, even trucks.
There's 35 years on the North Shore. This is heavy.
Thousands were forced from their homes.
People that I work with, they lost their whole house. You know, there's this one young man, 8 people live in the house, and it's gone.
And among those displaced, actor Jason Momoa.
There's a North Shore, and a lot of people have been asking. Power went off. We're safe now.
And across Hawaii, more than 200 people were rescued from homes and cars. In northern Oahu, members of the National Guard trudged through waist-deep water to help stranded drivers and mud-bound homeowners. Melanie Lee saw what's left of her house for the first time.
We've been here over almost 20 years. We lost everything. My children's, pictures, just real sentimental stuff. Now it's like, now where we go from here.
In Maui, the flooding comes as the community continues to recover from the devastating fires there 2 years ago.
And we know for so many people, the fires are one thing, and now to have flooding, and in some cases, their homes that they had just moved into, it can feel overwhelming.
Tony, the evacuation orders have been lifted, and the governor of Hawaii said that this disaster fortunately did not kill anyone, but he estimates that a year's worth of rain in just a few days likely caused about $1 billion in damage. Tony.
Matt, thank you very much. Up next, it came from outer space all the way to a bedroom in Texas. What was it? We'll explain next. What sounded like thunder Saturday over Houston was actually a meteor breaking apart over the city. Part of it landed in the suburban home of Sherry James, crashing through the roof, bouncing off the floor, and ricocheting before landing in her daughter's bedroom.
It's scary because I said I'm glad my daughter wasn't in there. Could have hit her. It might have killed her.
That said, James, a sci-fi fan, says she's grateful for that souvenir. Ted Nichols, who composed music for some classic Saturday morning cartoons in the 60s and 70s, has died, according to The Hollywood Reporter. You know that one, of course, from Scooby-Doo. At Hanna-Barbera Productions, he also did The Flintstones and Josie and the Pussycats. Ted Nichols was 97. That's another day in America. I'm Tony DeCopel. For all of us here at CBS News, good night.